Thank you for joining us, everyone. This is Moving to Beer and Dan bringing us in. And we were going to really have an interesting episode because we watched this movie called The Northman and we got some really interesting meads to do it. And I have some wonderful friends to help me along the way.
Joining you, guest host Aaron. I'm your Viking age expert.
You got Blake, your screaming expert.
Borky, borky, borky. This is Brian, inviting you to some Swedish meatballs and mead.
Are we in an IKEA now all of a sudden? What's up?
Hey, no, Swedish meatballs are timeless.
They are.
They're also
especially
made
when
of
they're
horse.
with horse, which you saw a lot of like
Dead horses
in this movie. All right, so we watched The Northman. It is available on streaming services, and we knew what we were going to watch ahead of time. So I made an extraordinary effort to go out and seek some mead because there's not really beer, but they drink mead in the movie.
Yeah.
And mead comes in many different ways, shapes, and forms, and we'll talk about that later on in the episode. But we tried two that were from Denmark.
Battleground.
No, we did
One's
two
from
from we did
Battleground.
two from Denmark and one from Battleground.
One local here
one.
and two
Yes.
Danish.
We Danish ones, yes. We'll talk about them later, but yes. So shout out to Ethereal Mead because that's the one from Battleground Local, and I like that one the most. But we'll get into that later. First, we're going to talk about this crazy film. It was 2.5 hours. We suffered through it, but it didn't seem like 2.5 hours. There was a lot of visual.
There was no suffering on part of the viewing.
I don't think we suffered.
Yeah, I think
It's also-
it was a good movie.
It's also only 2 hours, 17 minutes.
All right, well, there you go.
yeah.
And that's with credits and roll in and all that. So,
Yeah.
And the title screens. There are many.
And there's
like three.
it's broken into parts. And you had mentioned that this is kind of based on Hamlet.
Oh, that wasn't me, but
It's loosely based on the story of Emleth, which was the inspiration for Hamlet.
Yeah.
So
But there's
same source material.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So-
It's one of the Norse sagas.
Basic story structure. Prince is forced out of his home, comes back and kills the uncle who killed his father.
Kisses his mom.
That wasn't in Hamlet. I
Mom
don't
kissed
think.
him, to be fair.
Mom kissed him. He was just standing there in shock. I'm
Also,
like, oh,
real
you
quick,
wanted
should
my dad die?
we help into spoilers?
Yeah,
Should we
spoilers.
get?
Oh, we're
going
gonna
to
spoil the shit out of this, dude. I don't care.
So
Let's
put
not-
something,
let's
put
not
something
t-
before the mom kiss then, because
All
that's
right.
Not kid friendly.
Oh, this
Up
is
front, not kid-friendly.
This is R-rated. There is butts hanging about, and there's lots of swords with blood splurging everywhere. So
There's a lot
this
of violence and death.
there's a man-made
Graphic violence and themes.
There's
Yes.
a horse statue made of chopped up people parts. That was upsetting.
Yeah. So
oh God, yeah, you're right. That was sending a message. That was meant to send a message.
So okay. So this Prince Emleth is on the verge of becoming a man when his uncle kills his father in front of him. It's like, hey,
Oops.
he was already sort of going to die, and he
yeah.
wanted to die in combat, so it wasn't really that bad of a thing. But you fast forward 20 years, and he's a Viking, and he comes back, and he's like, I'm going to save my mother, kill my uncle, and avenge my father. And this is a Robert Eggers movie, and he did The Witch and The Lighthouse. And The Lighthouse was an amazing black and white film. The Witch had some interesting kind of saturated color things, and I was really taken about. I mentioned it while we were watching it. We went from black and white to a few colors to full color. And it really foretold.
Yeah, there was a real visual effect with like a dream sequence or like a spiritual, like dream logic kind of scenes. And it was really cool. I thought it was a great effect that kind of, it included this kind of, spiritual dreamscape.
Or supernatural.
Supernatural,
Whenever
yes.
supernatural
Very
was
supernatural.
happening,
That's a better word for it.
it would
Thank you, Bob.
desaturate and become black and white.
Black and white. Yeah, and it was a great way of like saying, well, yeah, this character is there and they're experiencing it, but they're experiencing it in a different way.
Yeah, and maybe even internally. There was at least one scene where we definitely knew that it was all going on in his mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like when he and his dad in the first scene, I guess
Played by
you would
Ethan
call it.
Hawke.
Played by Ethan Hawke.
Expertly by Ethan Hawke.
I like dude's built. Like he's a big dude. Like he looks really small in the TV shows we've seen him in recently, but no, dude's really built.
Bill Skarsgård.
Yes. They go to the witch doctor guy or the guy, the
Played by
shaman,
Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe, and they participate in a ritual to kind of like, this was my father passed, my grandfather passed it to my father passed it to me, now I pass it to you. So it's like, here's where you discover yourself.
It was like a spirit journey,
like a
a vision quest.
It was
Vision
almost-
quest,
it was
thank
very
you. It's a vision quest.
because the and you had mentioned this, the angle of the filming, and it's like, oh, he's actually floating. They show him like floating above everyone. They're sitting there cross-legged, but he's like floating above everyone. So he's totally on a spirit quest.
There were some really cool spatial effects in that scene and others where characters would like suddenly move, especially in these like spiritual sequences or dream sequences. Characters would suddenly move and they would appear where you wouldn't expect them. And it's kind of like a little bit of a shock because it's like, it doesn't make spatial intelligence, but then it makes sense in that sort of like weird dream logic that doesn't really follow like, real world physics, right?
Yeah. And there's an awful lot of old language being used.
Yeah.
And a lot of, like, everyone has sort of an English British accent, but not quite. They tried to at least not have everyone just like speaking,
British or Scandinavian.
Yeah,
Right.
Scandinavian.
Just not an American basic accent.
Right.
Nobody's saying howdy y'all as they slice off heads.
That was challenging for
They
me
could
at
have.
first,
They
but
should
like,
have.
but like 20 minutes into the movie, like I kind of get used to like there's this flowery language. I kind of like a poetic language. And having read like only Brian, I think it sounds like you've read several of the Norse sagas. I've only read 2. But it seems true to life. The way they were speaking, it has a little bit of that influence. Like the dialogue, the way it's written.
The first few scenes seemed almost in
Poetic.
iambic pentameter, the Shakespearean verse, to maybe kind of connect Hamlet to the Northman.
It very much felt like a play.
And it's
yeah,
not this.
But as the movie went on, it
diminished.
it
somewhat.
diminished quite a bit. But then it was very interesting because people would be singing in actual
Throat singing. I was like, where's the didgeridoo? No, they're just throat singing.
or speaking in Danish or Swedish or
whatever.
some Nordic language I didn't
Viking.
understand.
Old Viking.
Old
Norse.
Viking.
Yeah,
Old
Old
Norse. Yeah, maybe.
What's cool though is like poetry from like Latin influenced languages. It relies on rhyming. It's like every other line or something. A sonnet has a certain structure. But in like Nordic poems, it's more about this rhythm. If you think about like Beowulf,
Beowulf had a
like
it's a song.
Sort of,
it's meant to almost be sung, and so everybody can hear it because it's all verbal. Nobody was writing anything down.
And there's a couple of things that this movie. So in college, I took like 1 year of Scandinavian history. Some of it was on the Vikings, and I love that they got some of these things really, really right. A couple of things they got right: arm rings. That was a thing in this movie, and that was a thing in Viking culture. Your chief gave you an arm ring if you like got a promotion. Essentially, if you made VP in the Viking horde, you got a couple arm rings. The other thing
With this synergy, I will slay our enemies.
Yes.
yeah,
Fight for Casual Friday.
Friday.
yeah, casual Friday.
Yay!
But the other thing, there's no horns on the helmets, which is great because that was a Victorian invention. Here and then in several scenes, I noticed people were living with their livestock in the same buildings, and that was accurate.
That was very accurate.
Yeah, and so like there's a movie. It's clear there are many things they got right, but in one notable scene, there's some I think we'll call it like a geological.
Yes. When you're fighting next to flowing lava naked, and they were naked,
You're gonna burn up.
you're going to burn the fuck up. I'm sorry. It's like, I'm sorry, excuse my French, but that's like 600 to 800 degrees. Yeah. Like,
What
you're
that feeds
you
into
can't go near it.
that feeds into the mystical nature of Almhit. The lead character's quest is that Odin's protecting him until his job is done.
Correct.
And on the accuracy, Aaron, Robert Eggers, the director, worked with historians and did meticulous research on the period. So much so that Professor Neil Price, archaeologist at Uppsala University in Sweden,
Uppsala. Yeah.
said the Northman might be the most accurate Viking movie ever made. Mm-hmm. And Eggers did admit there were a few historic references to the initiation ritual, making it the most fictional ritual in the movie, like him lapping up the
It was jungle juice at this point.
Yeah. That's why that guy Dane was over there with the backwards hat and the sleeveless shirt saying, "Bro, that's too much, bro."
Too much. Stop.
Oh,
But
dang.
yeah, so he did the research, and a lot of this does look accurate.
It shows,
Granted,
yeah.
the lava fight that's for the action portion. That's for him like
But the historians wouldn't know about the lava, so they probably
Yeah.
couldn't advise him about that.
Not really.
Were they aware of the Valkyries like taking people by horse? That was very cool.
Yeah,
that
that
might
was
be my
really
favorite
cool.
visual in the whole movie.
So there's some amazing actors
So-
and actresses in this, and I give the shout out to all of them. They all did an amazing job.
Let's
Even-
talk about art direction for a second.
Yeah.
Amazing art direction.
Costumes,
I don't want to
too.
spoil it, but Bjork has a cameo, and her costume is amazing.
Her
Yeah.
costumes all around. I
She
think, are
literally
really good.
just walked in wearing it and
Yeah,
said,
that-
"What are my lines?"
Yeah, well, that was our joke that she showed up, started saying what's in the movie, and Eggers just says, "Just start filming. We'll figure it out."
If Bjork showed up looking like that though, and she started like prophesizing, I'd listen though. Like
yeah.
that
Yeah.
costume was on point. It was.
The film is worth watching just to see Bjork's costume.
So she was a sage who they took her eyes, and she appears to people when they're in need, as typical.
Was she like threading? Was she
Yes.
knitting or something?
So she was one of the Norns.
Yes, she was knitting the threads of
cool.
life.
One
I
of the
didn't catch
three
that
Norns who
One spins, one weaves.
who spin
Oh, that's
your
right.
fate.
I didn't catch that. That's very cool.
And that's why you see a couple of scenes where they show like something just spinning,
the spindle.
the spindle going, or the spinning. And it was really interesting because they had some references at different points to, well, you're a king or you're in charge. Why are you doing manual labor? Or why is the women doing all of the same labor? Like the queen, she was kind of not doing everything. But in the first act, she was actually like, I'm going to make, rugs or stuff. She's like, I'm going to make stuff that actually works, because it's like, you got to participate in society. You just can't be the person in charge. It doesn't work like that. Everyone has to participate.
Everyone needs to contribute.
But on the actors, we haven't mentioned Anna Taylor-Joy as Olga the Sea or something.
Olga
Yes.
of the Birch Forest.
Yes.
the Rus.
And Nicole Kidman. Oh my God, they were phenomenal.
Amazing,
Yeah, the
amazing.
acting was fantastic.
Which, no surprise, they're incredible actresses, but just
Queen Gudrun was a Nicole Kidman.
for the
fan.
first,
Yeah.
for most of the movie, I was really disappointed in Kidman's performance, thinking, oh, okay, it's kind of a straightforward Queen role, and then that twist. And I just sat there slack-jawed thinking, this is, oh my God, this is phenomenal.
And like three dimensions were added to that character. I don't want to give
Yes.
anything away, no spoilers, but like Blake, I totally agree with what you're saying, because
Yeah.
it seems like it's kind of a cookie cutter queen role.
Yeah.
And part of it was the script she was given, but Nicole Kidman really leans into it and does a phenomenal job to add two more dimensions
Yeah.
to this character. And then, I remember this exact scene. It's like, yeah, wow. It's kind of like a splash of cold water in your face, because suddenly it's like,
I have to now kill you, mother.
well, no
Basically,
spoilers.
that's what it turns into.
No spoilers, Dan. But
Well,
yeah,
no, that's Dan's job, is to spoil everything.
I spoil everything. If you haven't seen this film, just know that it's typical. I mean, this is the hero's journey. I mean, if you
It's a
watched
revenge.
any,
Yeah,
it's a
revenge
revenge
story.
story. I mean, it's like you're gonna end up finding out really shitty things about your parents.
your parents are just people too. They just do the best they can.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Or unless your mom's a queen that really finagles some weird stuff.
Your dad's fine, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A lot of shade getting
not
thrown
really.
at him.
Lots of shade. I really enjoyed the visuals, the audio. I mean, there was a lot of really deep bass. I
Yeah.
mean, we were shaking. I was like, I had it cranked up. I was like, we're gonna feel the movie.
sound design was amazing.
Yeah, Brian and I were talking about this. Yeah.
Effects, music, everything put together. I mean,
Wet bone.
Yeah.
Like when they're stabbing, it's like that sounds real, dude.
Well, the headbutting scene, I looked away from the screen a few times. I was getting a little squeamish. Not a huge fan of heavy gore, but usually sound design fine. But then the one headbutting scene, I just kept thinking, this is, whew.
He's crushing somebody's
this
skull
is a
with his
lot.
own
Yeah.
skull. It's
That's
like,
a- that's
yeah,
a wet
but you
skull
didn't
pulp.
see the crushee.
you did not.
You did not.
All you did was
heard
hear it.
You heard it.
We got to see old Nosy.
And
Yes.
I looked away from that.
implied violence sometimes can be kind of more jarring than
Correct.
like explicitly showing violence. I think
That's a horror movie trick. That's why you don't show. That's why Jaws is because the shark was garbage and they just decided let's just show him less. But leaving up to the imagination's 10 times scarier.
right, because you see it in your mind and you see it in like full fidelity. I would say though, with the first few scenes, I thought this movie was going to be so like broody and atmospheric, because we see like these Vikings coming into this like Mott and Bailey, or not a Mott and Bailey. It's like this little walled village, and we see them kind of marching through. They've got their like raiding booty and some slaves, and like it lingers. It takes some initially it requires a little patience to show these long scenes. It's kind of doing all this like table.
And then we
dressings
stopped playing
table
Skyrim
setting.
and actually started watching the movie.
I mean, it literally this felt like a video game.
I mean,
The beginning.
All
of
I could
it.
think of was, "Oh, good, you're awake." However, the beginning of Skyrim kicks off with that classic dude looking at
I
you.
used to be an adventurer, but I took an arrow to the knee.
That game's amazing.
Yes, it is. I really think that we should also touch on, I want to say that the visuals and how they utilized the relationship to the gods and imagination, and they imagined. I mean, he experienced these things and he felt they were real in his own life. And like,
Right, but-
as these situations, these moments in his life where he had to make decisions, how that really
It's what helped,
impacted the
it's what helped
storytellers.
spurred him on
So-
and pushed him into his mission. But those ravens were real.
Yes, those ravens were real, and that was really amazing. I'm like, wow, okay, so Odin's ravens were there a number of times.
But you mean like the
But
spirituality?
the Norse world, the spirituality is not separate from the secular and the sacred are the same
It's
in
the
the
same.
Norse world.
Yes.
You
They
live
don't
in
go to church on for an hour on Sundays.
It's not compartmentalized.
Odin is in the room with you all the time.
Yes, and they really portrayed that well. I want to say that's why, as mentioned earlier, like this is one of the more realistic portrayals because it's like worshiping only when you need to like dispel the evil or something where they're doing something special. And there was some really interesting scenes about, tying out the slave or we're going to sacrifice. And it's like, how does this not really
Well,
play
his whole
out?
revenge mission, and again, not too many details, but his whole revenge mission, I always tie that stuff to the comic books, but it felt a little bit like Batman, just showing the idea of sorcery, the idea that it's like superstition, like feeding into these superstitions of, like he was freeing people and killing people, but all the guys in charge were thinking, oh no, oh my God, the gods are angry, like we're being haunted by ghosts. It's just a dude doing the work, like when the bat signal goes up.
Maybe he was in service of Odin
Correct.
Possible.
because
The uncle and them, they worshipped Freya, Odin's wife.
Odin's
One of
wife.
Odin's
Right, I
wives.
forgot about that.
Yeah.
And he worshipped Odin. He and his father were devotees.
Oh, One Eye himself,
One
Mr.
Eye.
Wednesday.
Yes, Mr.
I do like the way that the spirituality was represented. I do like the way that like the Viking cultural relationship to death was represented differently. Our culture is kind of keeps it like a little separate, 2 steps away, but here it's like immediate. And I, not to give away too much of the movie, but it's helped along though. I think with as Brian was saying, kind of the visual effects, the sound effects, the makeup for wounds.
Yeah.
was
all of it-
realistic. Really, really realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of it was really, really.
it
well
was
done.
icky.
It was a really icky movie, and if you're a lightweight, you may have to look away a few times. But if you're interested in historical reference and good, this is amazing writing. Like,
Yeah.
you had to figure out how these scenes are going to be built, and they shot it obviously, probably in Iceland because it looked really real. I mean, it looked like they're in the middle of nowhere, and there's
That was one of the
just
spots they filmed.
Landscapes were really
Apparently, Robert Eggers didn't have final cut of the movie, and he still stands by it. That's amazing, but he wishes he can get his own cut out there.
good. 3 hours
So-
and 17 minutes.
Well, just the
Something.
studio made like decisions that he didn't want to make, but it was like the first big studio he's worked with, and he's quoted as saying like, "I wouldn't do it again unless someone wants to give me a movie in full control." But
it is what it
I'll
is.
just go back to smaller stuff and.
Everybody's got a boss.
They do.
I don't think he did on The Lighthouse. He got to make exactly what he wanted. That movie is wild.
Yes. This did have a lot of black and white footage, and then it switched to color, and there was color used very specifically. And that's been a trope that's, I think, been really successfully used in the last decade and a half, maybe 2 decades, where
Color's great.
Yeah. You really just highlight a specific color, and there were often some of the scenery is in black and white, but then they would have the grass be green. Like everything's black and white except the grass
Yeah.
or the moss, or
yeah,
it's like, how do you pull the person in and not have them be bored while you're watching just like 30 seconds or a minute of just scenery?
you mean like black and white with like death playing chess with a knight?
Yes, exactly. And we did reference some Conan.
Connect 4.
We literally referenced some Conan the Barbarian activity in one of the scenes when he went to get the sword. Not to plot spoil some more, but yeah,
There was a
it's
sword.
very Conan activity going on. There was a sword.
Spoilers,
was a-
guys. There's
Yeah.
weapons.
Yeah,
There's weapons. I really like that. I thought it was interesting because, again, he did imagine it and then he lived it and he's like,
I love the like poetic logic though that came in, even to retrieving the weapon and the poem about the moonlight
Yes.
and like how that had like actually I don't want to say real world effects, but like real world to that story. Like there's a poetic logic to it that makes sense, and when you see it, it's I think it's fantastic. I mean, I enjoyed the movie altogether. Listener, you probably can tell I enjoyed it a lot. I also drank 3 samples of mead.
I was going to say,
which had me just a little bit buzzed. So maybe I'm not in the
bit.
best condition to talk about.
Well, I was
this
going to
movie.
say, I really enjoyed
no,
this
no,
movie.
no.
Sure didn't enjoy the meads.
So we're at a point in time where we're going to thank the audience for hanging out and listening. And now we're going to talk about what we drank. As mentioned before, we knew what we were going to watch ahead of time. I went over to John's Marketplace at way in Southwest. Well, it's not really way in Southwest, but
Multnomah Village.
Multnomah Village here in Portland in the metro area. And they had a fairly decent mead selection. Mead comes in a bunch of different varieties. So
All
mead is
terrible.
no.
Oh, great.
Sorry, I'll stop. I'll wait till we actually get to each one.
You're allowed to
So-
not like them.
So mead is broken into, well, basically anything made with honey.
50% honey, right?
50% honey is classified
So it has
as
to be
mead.
at least 50%?
Yes, as far as what you're
cool.
using as a sugaring or agent to feed the yeast that you're using. And it can use any yeast. You use champagne yeast, you can use regular ale yeast, you can use lager yeast, as long as it can stay alive and keep eating. That's the whole thing. Is usually
Right.
mead takes years to make. It's not a one and done. It's not a 1 week turnaround like you can do with ales and maybe a month turnaround with a lager. It takes time to make mead because it's a slow. The yeast acts really slow and eats really slow.
It takes its time. It savors every bite.
It savors every bite.
Like how I
So-
savor this delicious beer I'm drinking.
Correct. We had some opportunity to try 3 meads and then also adjust with beer and water because meads tend to be pretty high in alcohol. Mm-hmm. There were 2 19% and then one that was 13% alcohol. And we did little like shots.
Yeah,
of
we
them.
did
Just like,
tasters.
we did
Code
Didn't
word
do
for
bottles.
your hosts might be slightly buzzed, but not overtly.
There's
overtly drunk.
There is a difference. Mead, Mellow, cider, sizer, perry, and braggot. Those are the main classifications of things made with honey. And mead in and of itself is typically, as mentioned, it comes in dry, semi-dry, semi-sweet, sweet, or fruited. One of the ones that we did was a fruited mead. So it was 100% honey when it was made. And then they, after fermentation, added the fruit. So it was a fruited mead.
That was the third one, correct?
That's the third
Cool,
one.
cool.
We also had Mellow. Well, I guess I would say that's one of the 2 Danish ones that we had fruit in the fermentation process. And the other one would be considered a sizer. And a sizer is where you actually ferment apples with the honey. So it's a 50-50. So it's basically just like an apple wine. And you can do it, like I said, with champagne yeast or whatever yeast, wild fermented, whatever. And you typically want to, the ones that you're going to find if you go to a store and you can find mead or these variations as we found them, they're going to have a lot of seasoning, spices. They may or may not have hops added. It's just, they're all over the map. But the ones that we had were really good.
They were delicious.
Nope.
I liked all 3.
I liked all 3.
I liked the first and the third a little bit more than the one in the middle.
I tolerated the third one.
I agree with Aaron.
Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce these words because they're accented weird, like Danish words. So
Not
dansk,
German or
Oh,
English.
Dan, I'm looking at
D-A-
Dan's screen. It's just a bunch of like swear words. Dan, come on.
D-A-N-S-K.
So Dansk would be
Dansk.
Danish, and
Yes.
then the J has kind of a Y sound. So mjod, I think.
Mjod?
Mjod
Mjod.
Odenskov.
Like Mjolnir.
Yeah.
Mead,
Okay.
and then sizer. So I did okay. I took Norwegian in college. I did okay. I didn't do great, but
You,
I
you
think
did
that'll
better
be
than I did.
passable.
All right. The first one we did was called Odin Skull, and it was from Dansk Mjod. It was in a small bottle. They also had it in a big bottle. But I bought the smaller bottle because I'm like, I'm not sure we're going to like this or not.
Well, it's
And
also a lot of alcohol.
We're not.
19%, yes.
Well, we'll get the big ball when we go pillaging and take out the neighbors.
Correct.
next
So this
time.
one was honey, apple, slightly spiced with cinnamon, and there was a small amount of hops that were added in secondary just to kind of give it more depth.
I got a lot of cinnamon, like cinnamon and
lot
apple.
of cinnamon and apple.
Yeah.
I really like that one. That was, of the three, that was the one I could distinguish between all the flavors.
Yes.
I got honey, cinnamon, apple,
And then some other stuff.
and some other stuff.
Yeah, and some other
But
stuff.
I thoroughly enjoyed the first one.
Yes. And you can also, with the first one and the second one that we tried, which is the same product but made with perhaps either, I couldn't quite tell, either different apple or a different yeast. Both were really good, but there was a definite difference between them in their profiles. The second one we did was from the same company, but it was Rib Yod Mead. I am pronouncing it completely wrong, but both of them are 19%, and they are from the same, I want to say, base, but maybe not. They say that the mead is brewed with the same honey as Viking's blood, whereas the Odin's one is not the same honey. So that I think that's the difference. But the apples are the same. Apples, and it's then dry hopped after it's fermented, and that gives you a little bit of sweet spice, and there's caramel, a little flower and citrusy notes on the second one, but not nearly. I want to say that was more mellow and a way different profile than the first
It was
one.
kind of like all of those flavors. They weren't distinct elements like the first one.
Right,
where
yeah.
it's
It was
like
kind of
melded,
muddy.
it was
Very muddy,
melange.
yes.
You guys
very
are
muddy.
insane. It was way too much. I know Dan's trying to steamroll over me, so I don't voice my opinion.
You're
These
welcome
were-
to voice your opinion. No.
No, that
All-
first
all
one
opinions are
was
welcome.
too much, man. There was too much just kick up front. It was a nice warm once it was down.
Too much alcohol.
Too
or
much,
too
too
apple?
much every flavor.
Too much
just
cinnamon.
It was just
Very
too much
forward.
flavor.
It was very
I,
forward.
I
So
didn't
it was
get
like a
any.
cacophony, like too many different.
Yeah,
things
like I just-
happening.
I didn't get-
I
didn't
enjoyed
get
the
anything.
complexity.
I
Yeah.
hated it. I did
Alright.
not like any part of it. And the second one was a little better, but still just
The second one was more rounded.
Every
Second
sip,
was my least favorite.
every sip, I made a face. And I turned away so the guys would make fun of me. But every sip, I was like,
That's
no.
true.
You're allowed to not like things.
You're
Mike.
allowed
That's
to not like
Blake
things.
did not like it.
He didn't.
Dan
I'm
doesn't
sure-
like conflict.
I'm sure there will be a certain percentage of our listeners that completely agree with you if
Correct.
they try all of the same.
Oh, you mean
meads.
listeners who are correct?
No, the listeners who
I'm
have
kidding, I'm kidding.
no Scandinavian heritage.
It's good to Hoover.
All right.
Just because I love potatoes doesn't mean I can't appreciate
on,
Scandinavia.
on to Mead 3.
Potatoes
Right.
are from South.
We know
America,
you
sir.
hated all three.
You
From
hated all
Ireland.
three. You're allowed. You're allowed. It's all good. So,
Well, I tolerated 3.
so the third one was called Sylvan Twilight, and it was Marionberry with meadow foam honey.
The third one was Valkyrie Kisses and Ambrosia.
Oh, it was
It
Ambrosia.
yeah, it was fantastic. The Marionberry
Yes.
added a whole layer.
Is that why you were throat singing through half the movie?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was it's really distracting.
Ethereal mead out of Battleground, Washington, of all places. It's like just
Right?
north, on the northeast
Crazy.
of Vancouver a little bit. It's a rich fruit forward mead. The meadow foam honey again. So this would be I believe, based on what I've read, it fermented out first and then they added the Marionberries later. So that you have just a base mead with this really nice rounded, and I could be wrong, it could be a sizer. I looked at a couple of different sites trying to figure out which is it. Did it ferment with the Marionberries or after? My guess it was after, because you get such a strong flavor profile from it.
That one I was
Marionberries
okay
are
with.
there.
It was super strong berry flavored. It has the smell of like vanilla and cherries up front when you drink it, and then it feels a little bit slick on the tongue, like it just goes down like a nice, not thick syrup, but it's a little it's got some viscosity to it. It's not just water.
Nice,
It's
like
got a little-
nice mouthfeel to
Yes.
it. I will say this one had way more of that berry sort of presence and less spicy. The other ones had like more cinnamon, more spice.
Yes.
To it. This one was just very fruity, very
It
fruity.
It
and
had a
pleasant.
ton of tannins too, so it did hit a little sweet, but then it really dried out. All three of them dried out really well.
Yeah,
They
I can
didn't
agree with
linger-
that.
They didn't linger as sweetness; they were just really dry.
This third one I would really enjoy drinking in like mid-January. I kick in a door from the cold. I shake off the snow. Just a cool curvy glass of this stuff. Just sip.
You throw your wolfskin cape to the side and
Faux wolfskin.
You put your feet up to the hearth and have your Viking sword next to you. As a,
Yeah, I mean, I actually
it's foam core, but yes,
yes,
sorry.
I saw it actually.
Safety first, Aaron.
I was
Safety
looking,
first.
I was looking for a braggot, and braggot is actually like completely fermented and done mead mixed with an ale. That's done, and it doesn't matter
That's
what the bases are.
right, yeah.
I really wanted to do that because historically, from what I read, braggot was more common because mead takes a long time and beer doesn't take as much, and then you just mix it.
They
You
had
wanna
to get
kick it
drunk.
up.
They're bored.
And honey is a resource that's
It's-
a little
yes.
harder to acquire.
It's a seasonal thing. So it was really interesting to be able to I went to a couple of shops. I called around. I was like, no one has any right now, but there is some available time to time. I just couldn't find any this time around.
Well, I was as I can, if I can play historian or be the Viking expert for kind of two quick points. One, Vikings did mostly drink ale, to my understanding.
Yes.
Mead it does require a lot of honey. Very little land in Scandinavia is good for farmland or arable, and so
Well, at high northern latitude, honeybees have a very short season.
Yes.
yeah. So there wasn't a lot of mead to be had. A lot of
Right.
and it makes perfect sense if you have ale a lot of time. You're gonna tart up the ale to make it special ale rather than just have mead as straight mead. But the other thing, there's this idea that Vikings had lots and lots of wine, and they did trade for some wine, but it was really the rich classes that had wine. It wasn't common. This idea of Vinland, it's a common misconception that there were grapes, where Leif Erikson came over to Canada and he found grapes, or he went far enough south. Vinland, Vin is associated to grapes in Romance languages. In Old Norse, Vinland refers to grasslands. And as soon as somebody told archaeologists that, they found there were natives with blue eyes up in Longsop Meadows in Newfoundland, 1,000 miles further north than Chesapeake Bay, where grapes grow, and everybody's like, oh, well, maybe that's where the Vikings found it. I just wanted to plug that for any history nerds that are listening. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so I want to make one more point.
All right. Make your point, Brian.
My point is,
We're listening.
of the 3 meads that we tried, I think the third one, though everyone enjoyed it, didn't go as well with the film because it was so sweet.
It was sweet.
I agree.
Yes.
And this film was not a sweet film.
it is.
No.
Unless you like drinking blood.
It was a dark,
or
brooding
eating
film.
mushrooms.
Or hanging out with foxes in a cave.
Yes. Correct.
George,
That's all I'm gonna
anyone?
say.
I can second Brian's point. That's a good call.
But no, I agree. And Brian, I'm glad you say, because I agree. I liked the third mead the best. But I think the first one, for me, matched the movie the best. Because the third one was a little too fruity, a little too light, a little too happy.
Yes.
Whereas this is a dark movie.
This is
it's
really dark.
An enjoyable movie, and I'm glad I saw it. But
Yeah.
but the first mead, I think, matched.
It was complex
It was.
and spicy
and there's different elements
and
that are working.
less sweet.
Yeah.
We've now
Get out of here, Bjork. Go on. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go away.
yeah, Bjork, go do your thing. All right, so
Bjork
we're
is
gonna
nothing if complex.
we're gonna do our
Bjork just broke into his house.
we're gonna do a mead name rename game instead of a beer name. We're gonna do mead name rename games. I don't care which one, whatever one you'd like, and if you have the opportunity to seek mead and you can get some to watch and sip this opportunity, do it because I think it really. Those first two, the ones that were from Denmark, I think went really, really well. The third one, I would agree. I was just like, I really like that because it's just sweet and light and tasted like mead. Versus the first two had a lot more complexity to it.
If you're like me and you just would not like mead, I don't think I'm a mead guy, guys. If you wouldn't, I'd say a really piney, bitter IPA in place. So something really just dark and strong, almost offensive flavor. A
Yeah,
Scotch
yeah.
to go with how
Pine,
strong.
Very
is it?
brooding.
Like if you can get it, if you can get a Piney the Elder or younger, like those are real. They taste like feet.
No, I was gonna say like a Scotch pine lager, like
Yeah.
something that's got like that resinous piney quality to it. That would work well.
Because
I
there were
think.
no trees.
Or
They cut them all down. They cut them all down to make those long hauls, Dan.
I know.
Iceland had trees once.
or
They
you
cut
can
'em all
drink
down.
your enemy's blood. I don't know. I'm not.
All right,
I don't want your
something with a very
so did-
peaty, smoky.
So did
Yeah,
Easter
yeah.
Island had trees, but they're all gone now too.
Damn, those are
Yeah, it's the same.
statues.
All right, we're going far afield
We
here.
are going
We are.
far afield. All right, mead name rename game instead of beer name rename game. We're gonna just rename something. It
We
doesn't
typically
matter.
take the plot keywords from IMDb,
Yes.
but we couldn't find a whole lot of good ones.
They
I
are
found one
obsessed
good
with
comeback.
nudity.
Yeah,
Yes, there's
There-
a lot of
there's a fair
bit
amount of-
you don't see
So-
any front, but maybe a little
Some
bit
man
of front.
butt, a little bit of lady bush briefly,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah,
about
it's
it.
nothing to fantasize
Talk
about.
home.
Yeah.
Nothing to talk to mom about later on. You're just like, oh, it's just gross. This is gross.
I can tell you right now, I'm not even sure my dad would be into this movie.
It's a little, yeah, okay. So,
Well, the main character talks to mom later too. So
yes, he does. Oh,
All right, rename game.
Let's not go there. Okay, so
the first one, I'm going to rename the first one.
okay, so
go ahead.
let's frame this first because not everybody may have heard us do this before.
New listeners,
so
please.
new
Yes.
listeners, if you go to IMDb and look for whatever show or movie or whatever you're looking at, scroll about halfway down. Don't use their app. Go to the website. Use your web browser, and you go down to where the storyline section is, and you will see some words that are circled, and then it'll have a number, and it'll say more. Click on that number and more, and those are the plot keywords that have been submitted by users of IMDb that have signed in and said, hey, I think this is relevant. If you are signed in, you can then add relevance. You can say, yes, that's relevant. You click on it, it's relevant. And, whatever works. These are user submitted. These aren't submitted by IMDb writers or whomever, staff or whatever. These are user submitted. So they can range from really positive and good to what the hell are they talking about?
My favorite's still when we watch Sing 2 and every other one was just anthropomorphic and
Yes.
then whatever animal was.
Yeah.
That was
It's like
terrible.
sometimes they're not very original. So this time because these aren't very original either, it's really kind of straightforward. We're just going to come up with something fun or use something here. And you don't have to tell us what one you're going to rename, but feel free to. We're going to go around the table and figure out who has the best rename.
Well, I'll rename the very first one with not something from IMDb because they're obsessed with nudity, but I'm going to
Yes.
rename the first one Hot Russian Blonde.
Which is very accurate. Would you drink a hot Russian blonde?
Sure would.
Not if I have to drive later.
Yeah, well, there is that.
Well, I did go to IMDb and I found a pretty good combination, possibly the only good combination that's there. I'll go for the first one because it made me the most angry. I hated it the most. Viking sword fight.
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah.
Which is weird that it's not all together. That's two separate ones.
Yeah, you can put them together.
Right? Like I
a fun
saw
game.
Viking, I saw sword fight and thought, why is this not already okay, fine, I'll combo.
Well, it was
Well
axe
done.
fights. They didn't use swords very often. They did a lot of axes.
That's true. There was a lot of
and
axe throwing.
spears, and then there was some swords.
Horse
but not
heads.
much.
But well done, Blake. The sum is greater than its parts.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
good combo.
Parts.
Brian.
I will also name the first mead Smoky Ritual.
Ooh, there wasn't a lot of smoke. I mentioned this multiple times. I was like, "Where's all the smoke from the fire? Oh my god, these are like natural gas fires. There's no smoke. What the hell?"
Yeah, the Norse had gas.
They must have.
They
because
had
there was
propane tanks.
no
Clean.
smoke.
If you look really
burning
close, you can
natural
see the
gas.
propane tanks just off the side. You
I'm
don't remember that one Norseman? I can't think of a fun way to Norsify Hank Hill.
Yes.
Clean burning propane.
Hjalmar Hilla.
Yes.
John Marhilla says clean burning propane.
Clean.
All right, Dan.
I'm gonna wrap it up.
Go ahead
with
and
this
win it.
Wonderful. I always win them. Not always, but
You
there's
win
usually
more often than I wish
more
you would.
often. Well, as somebody who brews and makes beer and alcohol and things myself, I always come up with fun names. My friends always say you always have really great naming of your beverages, and I think I'm going to use a single word off the IMDb. I'm just going to call it, and we're going to name the first one because y'all also named the first one, and I would agree probably went best with the movie. I'm going to call it Usurper.
Nice. I was really hoping he was going to say like the word storyline or something, or full cast, or like maybe something that wasn't on the list.
I want to say Usurper really fits because it's not what you expect, and you come in and you just mix it up and you remember it.
Well, I would order a beer or a mead with any of these names. Usurper would catch my eye first.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
I hate these meats.
You're allowed to have that opinion. Okay, so if you haven't had the opportunity to see this film, The Northman, really
it's in
good.
theaters as we're recording,
Correct.
but it's findable somewhere online.
It's been streamed. It's out
So
there
it's
somewhere. So
possibly Paramount or HBO Max, maybe.
Living Room Theaters is showing it in Portland right now. So if you want to order a non-mead beer and have
Yeah, I
comfy
can't imagine
seats-
any places are just serving meat out of a cask,
probably
Not.
out of a headless horse body. I don't know.
Only
I
Dan's.
don't know.
Only at Dan's.
Yes. No, you seek out something that you're going to enjoy, but also be challenged with, because this is a very challenging film from the standpoint of the characters. The main protagonist went through a lot. He was challenged in his life. yet he had a mission.
He had to cut his hair.
He had to cut his hair, and
Well, he had a mantra.
You didn't. He had a mantra.
Any main character that has a mantra, that is a damaged person.
It's not a
Yes.
standard Hollywood film.
It is not.
It's great.
Thank you, Robert Eggers. Keep
It
us
was
on our
a
toes.
great film.
Yeah.
We all enjoyed it,
Yes.
but it's not for everyone.
No, it's
Or it might
very
be.
long and kind of strung out. Not drung out, but strung out.
It drawn out.
It rewards patience.
It's artistic.
Strung out is
Very
that.
artistic.
Strung out as drugs.
What's that? Oh, come on! That movie where they're all doing heroin. Trainspotting.
Trainspotting.
Trainspotting is strung out.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the Sex Pistols, but okay.
Also strung out.
Also strung out, yes. Thank you all for hanging out and listening. It's been kind of a long episode, but we really enjoyed the film. We really enjoyed, at least 3 of us really enjoyed the meads, and there was also other alcohol that was consumed. But, if you don't hydrate,
Blake.
You'll dehydrate.
you will. And, as always, the opinions expressed during the taping of this recording are those of the hosts. And, we really thank you all for hanging out and listening, because
Thank you.
we kind of talked
Aaron
a lot this
doesn't.
episode. And,
I do.
Aaron
shout
hates our
out-
fans.
Shout
No, I
out
love
to
our
the few
fans.
friends and fans that listen in. And we really do think you should watch this, because this is an amazing film. Even if you're not really into mythology, it blends some really well done writing. And,
Good acting.
and good acting.
Good film craft all around.
It-
You,
it
you
felt-
could
it felt
imagine
like a
this
play.
happening. It felt like a play. I could see this happening. It doesn't seem like that's really crazy and weird. No, this really could have happened. It felt real.
Last week.
Or
Maybe not last
or
week,
in
but-
the year 800. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, like a week
890.
ago. I don't understand how time works.
Year 890. It was BC or 80?
It said 80.
80. 80.
All right.
Yeah? Yeah.
1,200 years ago.
Yeah, 1200 years.
I'm trying to remember what it said in the movie.
No, it's like 895
at,
or
at the very
865.
start.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out and listening. This is Dan signing out.
This is Aaron. Thanks for listening. Watch out for Freya.
This is Blake saying sorry I yelled.
Goodbye. This is Brian.
All right, let's cut that horse's head off.
Oh, yeah, I'm not going to